Hi, biology. Welcome back to our notes. So going back, I'm going to go ahead and just go through this whole presentation again. Now, make sure that you read my instructions for the notes. I can only do 5-minute sections at a time. So that being said, make sure that you're doing these in the proper order of what they're labeled. So let's look at how genetics began. Remember we talked about this awesome guy, Gregor Mendel. We watched a video on his pea plants. He crossed a bunch of pea plants. He is the father of genetics. That's why we are studying Mendelian genetics, because this is from Gregor Mendel. So the passing of traits to the next generation is called inheritance or heredity. Gregor Mendel is known as the father of genetics. Mendel performed cross-pollination in pea plants. Mendel followed various traits in the pea plants he bred. So remember this, you have a parent, you cross it with another parent, and you get something different. Remember what we called the one that's hidden. So you have the first generation that you have all yellow and no green. The green is completely hidden. This is recessive, this is dominant. I also want you to take a look at this right here. So I haven't had a chance to talk to you guys about this yet much. This is a ratio. So we have 6,022 yellow to 2,001 green. So it's a ratio of, when you break these down, to 3 to 1. It's a 3 to 1 ratio. Anytime I have you do a ratio, you count up how many you have, put a colon, that's what this is, to compare it to how many of the other phenotype you see. So if we're looking at the parent generation, how many yellows do you see? How many green do you see? You have 1 yellow and 1 green. So the parent generation would be a 1 to 1 ratio. The first filial generation, your F1 generation, is all yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have 8 yellow, 0 green. So it would be an 8 to 0. 8 colon 0. It's an 8 to 0 ratio. Okay, so they counted up all of these. When you broke it down into kind of like more of like a fraction, when you take your least common denominator, it's a 3 to 1. So for your offspring, the offspring of this P cross, the parent cross, are called the first filial F1 generation. The second filial F2 generation is the offspring from the F1 cross. So let's go back. Remember, you have your P as your parent, first filial F1. These all self-fertilize, and you get your F2. So Mendel studied a bunch of different traits, but they're mostly broken down into these 7. Seed or pea color, flower color, seed pod color, seed shape or texture, ignore my pop-up here, seed pod shape, stem length, if I stop moving and that'll go away. Last we have flower position. Genes come in pairs. An alternative form of a single gene passed from generation to generation is an allele. So you get 1 allele from your mother, 1 allele from your father. Mendel called the form of the trait that appeared in the F1 generation dominant. It was dominant. It covered up the other one. So if you go back to the P's, the yellow is dominant. Mendel called the form of the trait that was masked in the F1 generation recessive. So going back to that picture, the green is recessive. It wasn't seen, so it was masked or hidden. Let's talk about dominance. An organism with 2 of the same alleles for a particular trait is homozygous. So 2 capitals or 2 lowercase. An organism with 2 different alleles for a particular trait is heterozygous. 1 capital, 1 lowercase. Genotype and phenotype. An organism's allele pairs are called its genotype. So we've got those letters. You get 1 gene from mom, 1 gene from dad. Those letters are your genes. Those are your alleles. Well, the observable characteristic, or what you see, remember that's like brown hair, brown eyes, 6 fingers, 5 fingers, whatever. That is your phenotype. That's what you see, what we have as physical representations. We have Mendel's law of segregation. 2 alleles for each trait separate during meiosis. At this point, we're talking about meiosis 2. We're in anaphase. Those chromosomes, those bits are pulling apart. So during fertilization, 2 alleles for that